Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down a truly powerful story about disaster, practical ingenuity, and incredible community response. We're looking at what a devastating natural disaster can actually teach us about human resilience. We'll be diving deep into the desert, following an extended family whose entire world gets completely upended by a massive sandstorm, and we'll examine the exact steps they take to recover. It's a really fantastic case study in how we respond when absolutely everything we've built is just suddenly swept away.
To really wrap our heads around the gravity of this situation, just listen to this quote from the family's grandfather. "That house stood for 3 generations, but nature decided that was enough." Talk about heavy, right? That heavy realization really sets the emotional stakes for us today. We aren't just talking about a damaged roof here. We're looking at the completely devastating toll of a massive sandstorm wiping out a multi-generational family home. Decades of history, memories, shelter, just completely erased in a matter of hours. It really forces us to ask, when nature decides it's enough, how do humans decide to start over?
All right, Section 1, the sandstorm's aftermath. Let's dive straight into the immediate conditions right after the storm cleared, specifically looking at how Abdullah's extended family managed to mobilize.
Because as you'll see, the response timeline unfolds incredibly fast. On day 1, the sandstorm hits the desert village with total destructive force. But then, by day 3, a stroke of unbelievable luck, or maybe just super resilient infrastructure, completely changes the game. A single telephone tower miraculously survives the storm, and Abdullah uses it to push out a distress call to his extended family. This rapid sequence of events is absolutely crucial. It highlights a really swift transition from pure tragedy to active mobilization. By day 4, the cavalry arrives, bringing the family's father, who's described as a born builder, directly into the disaster zone. And by day 5, the real boots-on-the-ground work begins.
Arriving on the scene, they're met with this intense duality of destruction. On one hand, you have total devastation. The story literally describes the house as being scattered across the desert for dozens of kilometers, much like a kid leaving Lego pieces all over the living room floor. Visually, it's just completely overwhelming. But, and this is a huge but, the father, our born builder, spots a crucial silver lining. The original foundation, it remains completely intact. So the takeaway here is that they don't have to start from absolute zero. They have a solid, workable base, which means they can actually aim to restore the exact original layout of the home.
That brings us to Section 2, engineering a rescue. Because actually, before any of the structural rebuilding can kick off, their initial assessment gets suddenly interrupted. Out of nowhere, a micro-crisis pops up that requires immediate problem-solving. Enter their neighbor Isla. She comes rushing over, absolutely frantic, because her beloved cat Layla is trapped alive under heavy rubble. Isla reveals that Layla is her only remaining companion. So suddenly, the stakes are deeply personal and incredibly urgent. A life is on the line, buried under the debris.
This presents a massive physical challenge. Think about it. How do you move a concrete slab that weighs a literal ton? You have to remember the context. They're in the middle of a desert village that was just flattened. There's no heavy machinery, there are no cranes or specialized rescue crews coming anytime soon. So how can a father and his young son Musa move a ton of concrete quickly enough to save this poor animal?
Well, the father kicks into gear with what he perfectly terms his engineering instinct. He breaks down the mechanics of a simple lever for his son, and it's brilliant. Step 1, they scour the debris and find a long, solid, sturdy beam. Step 2, they wedge that beam directly underneath the massive concrete slab. Step 3, by pushing down on the far end of the beam together, they multiply their downward force, lifting that incredibly heavy weight upward. It's this beautiful, spontaneous moment of teaching right in the middle of chaos, and it actually works. They safely lift the slab and rescue Layla the cat.
Now, saving the cat might seem like a small side quest when the whole village is destroyed, right? But it leads us straight to Section 3, the power of community.
That rescue serves as a crucial catalyst. Get this, out of deep gratitude for saving her cat, Illa reveals something game-changing. She actually possesses a surplus of unused building materials sitting right in her backyard, totally untouched by the sandstorm. Her late husband originally intended them for a house expansion that just never happened. She realizes she only needs a very small fraction of it for her own minor repairs, so she freely gives the entire remainder to Abdullah's family so they can rebuild. They had the foundation but no materials. Suddenly, because they stopped to help a neighbor, they have exactly what they need.
And Ila's reasoning here captures the absolute moral core of this entire story. She tells them, "Cooperate in righteousness and piety. This misfortune could have happened to any of us." Her generous donation elegantly highlights a vital lesson about resilience. Shared resources and neighborly duty are essential simply because disaster does not discriminate. The sandstorm didn't care whose house it was blowing over.
Moving right along to Section 4, Rebuilding and Redefining Family. With the donated materials secured and the layout sketched out over that surviving foundation, the physical labor finally gets underway.
Building it back up is this highly methodical, totally shared effort. I love this line from the story. The hands remember, even when the back does not agree. They rely heavily on the grandfather's deep, ingrained muscle memory for laying brick, and they combine that with the sheer energy and discipline of the younger generation. It's a literal intergenerational transfer of skill, all focused on putting their lives back together, brick by brick.
The final result is just incredible. They didn't just put up walls, they restored the exact original floor plan. They made it feel familiar again. In fact, the daughter, Amina, went so far as to arrange the teacups exactly as the family remembered them from previous visits before the storm hit. And when it was all done, they celebrated the completion with a special tea. They didn't just build a shelter, folks, they restored a home.
Through this whole ordeal, you see them operating with a newly expanded definition of family. So what does true family actually mean here? It's defined as a bond that does not end where blood ends, but rather begins where care and support begin. It includes anyone who shows up to help. Isla is now family. The disaster stripped away all those superficial boundaries between neighbors and relatives.
And because of this newly solidified understanding of community obligation, something amazing happens. The mission expands. Once Abdullah's house is finished, the family decides they aren't just going to pack up and head back to their comfortable lives. Nope, they decide to stay. They're going to apply their building skills, their engineering instincts, and their collective muscle to help rebuild the rest of the village.
Which brings us to the ultimate thesis of today's explainer. When a storm destroys what took years to build, the strength is not in the walls, it is in the people who show up to help. Physical walls can fall. Roofs can be blown away like Legos. But true resilience isn't found in concrete. It is built entirely by the people who show up, simply because it's the right thing to do. The structural integrity of a community is always its people.
So, as we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Thinking about this incredible story of levers, layouts, and mutual aid, when the inevitable storms of life hit, who shows up in your community? And honestly, perhaps more importantly, when the storm hits your neighbor, are you the one showing up with a lever, ready to lift the weight?